Megan, we're still expecting Chris and Anjali, right? I'd like to just give them another minute.
Anjali is in the attendees. I'm going to try and move.
Okay. Thanks, Jesse.
But yes, Chair, otherwise I had not heard from Commissioner McCahill that he was not going to be here.
Okay. Maybe we will go ahead and call to order and we'll get him in when he's able. I guess everybody can hear me. Sounds good. So I'm going to call to order this Monday, December 15th, 2025 meeting of the Madison Plan Commission. And we'll start with roll call. Director Tuttle.
Good evening, everyone. Alder Field.
I'm here.
Alder Glenn. Here. Alder Ugair.
Here.
Commissioner Bazine.
Here.
Commissioner Heck is excused. Commissioner McCahill.
I do see
Here.
him. Oh, here we
Here.
go. Chris.
Commissioner Sanders.
Here.
Commissioner Solheim.
Here.
Alternate Wisniewski. School District Representative Chiak.
Here.
And Chair Gnam.
Here. Thanks. Thank you. We will start with some information from our technical facilitator, Jesse Poole.
All right, welcome to our virtual plan commission meeting. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. Members, if you are able, please activate your video and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you are able, please activate your video when you are speaking. Panelists, use the raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak, ask questions, or request a roll call vote. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. Members of the public who have registered to speak, the name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. The clerk will tell you when your time is up. After speaking, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with the committee, please send it to the email listed in today's agenda. Chair, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Our first agenda item is our time for public comment on items not in the formal plan commission agenda. Director Tuttle, do we have any registrants for public comment tonight?
There are no registrants on this item.
Okay. I would note there were a few written comments submitted between our last meeting and this meeting, so we'll make sure and consider those if we haven't already. Next, we would go to disclosures and recusals. Members of the Plan Commission should make any required disclosures or recusals under the city's ethics code. Does anyone have any disclosures or recusals related to tonight's agenda? All right, seeing none, we will move on to our minutes. We have the minutes of our most recent meeting on December 1st, 2025. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes from Plan Commissioners? Seeing none, I would ask if there's a motion and a second for approval of the last meeting's minutes. Alder Ugair, thank you. And Commissioner Solheim, thank you. Any discussion of the motion to approve last meeting's minutes? Seeing none, is there? Oh, yes, go ahead.
I wasn't here, so I wasn't here.
So you will abstain. That sounds good.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Other than one abstention, is there any objection to unanimous approval on the minutes? All right, the minutes are approved. We'll do our reminder for the upcoming meetings. We have regular meetings Monday, January 12th. So we have a little bit of a break around the end of the year, and then meetings February 2nd and 16 of 2026. Update your calendar. And those are all be virtual meetings at 5:30, like this one. All right, we will move on to new business. We'll start with our consent agenda. And as many of you know, it's been the custom of the Plan Commission to remove from the agenda those items on which staff members believe an application has been sufficiently reviewed to support approval with all the conditions placed upon it by the various city departments, and where the applicant accepts all those conditions and there are no individuals who have registered to speak in opposition to the item. Tonight, we'll also use a separate consent agenda for a number of items requested by an applicant or staff to be referred to a future meeting. Referral does not require a public hearing, but for the items that are referred, if you register to speak on one of those items and it's referred to a future meeting, you would need to come back and speak at the future meeting when the item is taken up, because there won't be a public hearing on that tonight. Also, finally tonight, we will, in addition to a public hearing on the approval consent agenda, we have one item recommended to be placed on file without prejudice because it is no longer applicable due to ordinance changes. It's item 10. So we'll actually have 3 consent votes, but I think it will be an efficient way to help us move through our meaty agenda for tonight. So we will start with the consent items for approval. Those are you can see that on the screen before you. Those are items 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, and 11 on our published agenda for tonight. And then, as I mentioned, we'll then have a separate public hearing for item 10, which is recommended to be placed on file without prejudice, and we'll treat that as a consent item. And then finally, we have items to be referred. 4 items for referral to the January 12th, 2026 meeting. That's item 12, 13, 14, and 15. And then 4 items to be referred to February 2nd, 2026, items 16, 17, 18, and 19. Of the items before you suggested for consent, are there any requests for separation from members of the commission? All right, if not, we'll start with our list of consent items for approval, and I'll just read the Legistar items and descriptions into the record, and then we'll move to a motion. So first, item 4 is Legistar 90616, and that would be approving the preliminary plat and final plat of first addition to Starkweather plat on land addressed as 111 North Walter Street in Alder District 15. Item 5 is Legistar 90801, and this is approving the final plat of the Ramish Farm Development First Edition on land generally addressed as 4000 through 4150 Packers Avenue and 4201 North Sherman Avenue. That's in Alder District 18. Item 7 is Legistar 90634, and that is approving the revised preliminary plat of Ryland Grove on property addressed as 6004 Commercial Avenue and 602 to 902 Reiner Road, and that's in Alder District 3. Item 8, Legistar 90920, and also relating to 6004 Commercial Avenue and 602 through 902 Reiner Road in Alder District 3, consideration of an alteration to an approved traditional residential planned TRP district master plan for the Ryland Grove subdivision to reflect changes in the development shown on a revised preliminary plat. Then we have item 9, Legistar 90636, approving the final plat of Ryland Grove on land addressed as 6004 Commercial Avenue and 602 through 902 Reiner Road in Alder District 3. Finally, item 11 is Legistar 90806, approving a certified survey map of property owned by Trinova Ventures, LLC, located at 2926 Atwood Avenue and 232 through 238 South Fair Oaks Avenue in Alder District 15. So we will, these approval items require a public hearing. We'll open the public hearing and close the public hearing on those consent items and move to a vote. Is there a motion and a second to approve this part of the consent agenda? Alder Glenn, thank you. Alder Ugair, thank you. Is there any objection to unanimous approval for these 6 items listed? Seeing no raised hands, the approval consent agenda passes unanimously. Now we'll take up item 10 on our agenda, which is Legistar 90800. This relates to 2926 Atwood Avenue and 232 through 238 South Fair Oaks Avenue, Alder District 15. Consideration of a conditional use in the traditional shopping street district and transit-oriented development overlay district to modify the required rear yard height transition to a residential district to allow construction of a 4-story mixed-use building with approximately 3,900 square feet of commercial space and 31 dwelling units following demolition of 2 buildings. The action here would be to place this item on file without prejudice due to the non-applicability of the request. And I will open the public hearing and close the public hearing on this item and ask for a motion to place this on file without prejudice and a second. Commissioner Solheim, Commissioner Wisniewski, thank you very much. Is there any objection to unanimous approval for placing item 10 on file? All right, and seeing none, we will record that as completed. And then finally, we'll take up the items for referral. These do not have a public hearing because we're referring them to future meetings. Again, the referral consent items to be referred to January 12th, 2026. I don't know why I want it to be 2016 again, but we'll go to 2026. First is item 12, which is Legistar 90615, relating to 3205 Stevens Street in Alder District 5. Consideration of a conditional use in the suburban residential varied SRV2 district for outdoor recreation and consideration of an alteration to an approved conditional use for a residential building complex in the suburban residential varied SRV2 district to allow construction of 2 4-story 26-unit multifamily dwellings, a 2-story 3-unit multifamily dwelling, and 2 2-story 4-unit multifamily dwellings in an existing residential building complex. Item 13, also to be referred to January 12th, is Legistar 90915, creating section 28.022-00741 of the Madison General Ordinances to change the zoning of property located at 33 West Johnson Street from PD, Planned Development District, to UMX, Urban Mixed Use District, and this is in Alder District 4. Related item is Legistar 90613, relating to 33 West Johnson Street in Alder District 4, consideration of a conditional use in the proposed urban mixed use UMX district for a new building with greater than 6 stories to allow construction of an 8-story, 205-room hotel. Then item 15, Legistar 90617, approving a certified survey map of property owned by Drury Madison LLC, located at 33 West Johnson Street in Alder District 4. These next items will be referred to the February 2nd, 2026 meeting, starting with item 16, Legistar 90916, creating section 28.022-00742 of the Madison General Ordinances to change the zoning of property located at 411 West Gilman Street from DC Downtown Core District to UMX Urban Mixed Use District. This is in Alder District 2. 17 is Legistar 90614, relating to 411 through 433 West Gilman Street in Alder District 2. Consideration of a conditional use in the proposed urban mixed use UMX district for a new building with greater than 6 stories and consideration of a conditional use in the UMX district for outdoor recreation to allow construction of a 15-story mixed-use building with 2,550 square feet of commercial space and 260 multifamily units. Then also for referral to February 12th is Legistar 90618, approving a certified survey map of property owned by LCD Acquisitions LLC, located at 411 through 433 West Gilman Street in Alder District 2. Finally, item 19 for referral to February 2nd, 2026 is Legistar 90936, creating section 28.022-00743 of the Madison General Ordinances to change the zoning of property located at 5025 Sheboygan Avenue from PD, Plan Development District, to amended PD, GDP, Plan Development, General Development Plan District, and creating section 28.022-00744 to approve a specific implementation plan. And this is property in Alder District 11. So, for the referral items, there's no public hearing, so I would ask for a motion and a second to refer these items. Alder Field, thank you. Maybe not. All right, let's go with Commissioner Solheim. I'll take yours as the motion to refer, and Commissioner Wisniewski as a second. Alder Field, did you have questions on the referral agenda?
No, just trying to move it. Thank you.
Okay, no, thanks. We'll take those other two as the motion. Any objection to unanimous approval for the referral agenda? And if not, the referral of those items is unanimously approved. We will dive back into our substantive agenda for tonight. So thanks everybody for working through those. That will take us to our agenda item 2, and this is Legistar 90908, amending sections within Chapter 28 of the Madison General Ordinances to allow reduced rear setback if adjacent to publicly owned multi-use path. And Director Tuttle, and I know we have Director Bannon as well. So Megan, will you start us talking about this one, or do we want to have Katie?
This code change proposes to do a few things. The first is that it proposes to reduce the required rear yard setback in various mixed-use, commercial, employment, and downtown zoning districts to 5 feet when property is adjacent to a public multi-use path. An example was provided in the staff memo of the Capital City Trail. This amendment also clarifies that an existing side yard setback provision is intended for street side yard setbacks. This is related to a prior zoning code change that was generally intended to ensure that there was enough space to preserve street trees. So it removes some confusing language about that aspect of the code. Removes some confusing language about when no side setback is needed, and removes a side yard setback that was intended to align with the building code requirements, but instead has become redundant and added some complication. Ultimately, aside from the rear setback change, the other proposed changes here do not result in substantive policy changes related to setbacks. Happy to answer questions between Katie and I after the public hearing.
Thanks, Director Tuttle. We have registrants for this item, so I'll open the public hearing. As a reminder, every registrant will have 3 minutes to speak, and we'll try to interrupt briefly with the warning when you get close to the time limit in the last minute or so. Director Tuttle, will you call on the registrants wishing to speak?
Sure. We have one registrant on this item, Linda Leonards, registered in opposition and wishing to speak.
Welcome, Linda. Looks like your mic is unmuted. So.
Hi, thank you.
Hi. Yep.
I'm concerned about the privatization of public property. This privatization can be seen in the first photo of my written submission. You may perhaps think this isn't a big deal, but it's about 1/3 of the width of the public space alongside of this building. Under MGO 10.31, encroachments into public grounds, such as an awning overhanging a sidewalk, require a street encroachment agreement. Yet private property owners are allowed to treat public land as private land along the bike path. When Plan Commission approved a conditional use permit for 302 South Patterson, a building which abuts the Capital City Trail, it added several conditions. One was a low fence or other mutually agreed upon landscape feature at the property boundary to indicate the line between public and private property. Another was that the developer needed to make efforts to give residents access to the 20-foot rear yard for pet exercise. These conditions, among others, were added to protect the Capital City right-of-way, which at that place had a prairie. Rather than changing the ordinance to a 5-foot rear setback in order to bring the rear yard in line with side yard setbacks, perhaps the side yard setback for buildings along a public multi-use path should be increased to something like 10 feet. A larger side yard setback would have provided better protection for trees along the side of 306 South Brearley. As noted in my written submission, trees were removed at 306 South Brearley, despite the developer assuring the Plan Commission that, quote, there is a large amount of large mature trees along the northern part of the site. They are on the adjacent site in the right-of-way. Those trees are not meant to be impacted at all, end quote. Maintaining a rear yard setback is important to us so as to not further increase encroachments into public space and to protect existing trees. These open public spaces are important, particularly in the Isthmus and the downtown, where there have been a lot of new residents and no new park space. I urge the Plan Commission to have a definition of, quote, publicly owned multi-use path. As it is, it's uncertain and there is no definition in the zoning code. And I do hope that the Plan Commission inquires of staff whether this proposal was prompted by any particular development proposal. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda.
Okay, those are all of the registrants we have on this item, Chair.
Great. Are there questions from the commissioners for our registrant on item 2? All right, seeing none, I will close the public hearing on item 2 and ask if there are questions from the commission for staff on this item. Commissioner Bassim.
I was wondering if staff could help me understand what problem this is trying to resolve or address.
Sure. I can take a stab at this, and then if Katie has anything to add, I'd welcome her opinion as well. Ultimately, this is intended to provide some greater consistency at the setback that would be required along multi-use paths for properties along those paths, particularly in districts where we have planned for and zoned for anticipated growth and redevelopment. Right now, due to a variety of conditions related to properties that abut these paths, development setbacks can vary quite widely. In some cases, a property's configuration may mean that the side of the lot abutting the path is a side yard, which may have a much shallower setback required. Could be in a planned development, which may also have reduced setbacks from the bike path, or could be a rear yard, which would require a deeper rear setback. So ultimately, I think one of the main things that this is trying to do is to create some greater consistency in those mixed use and commercial and downtown districts for how development can meet the path. Additionally, this is intended to help recognize that development adjacent to those paths can often provide for some activation of the path as well. Katie, do you have anything else? At least as far as that's concerned. The other technical things, happy to answer questions if you have any, Commissioner.
Commissioner Solheim.
Thank you. The speaker raised a question about tree protection. If there are trees in the right of way along a bike path or multi-use path, would those be subject to our recent tree protection ordinance changes?
Yes, they would be. And ultimately, I actually don't know if Tim or Lisa from the planning staff that are on here happen to know. I believe that the trees that the speaker mentioned, we'd have to check to see if ultimately those trees were impacted by the applicant or by a related infrastructure project in the right of way for the bike path. I seem to recall that there were two projects going on at the same time, and not sure if that was the exact property where that was impacted.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thanks. Any other questions for staff on this item? Are we ready to move for a motion on this one? Move to a motion on this item? Commissioner Solheim?
I will move approval for Legistar item 90908, amending sections within chapter 28 of MGO.
Thank you. Is there a second? Is that Commissioner Wisniewski? All right, thanks. Any discussion of the motion on the table? If not, is there any objection to unanimous approval for this item? Seeing none, we'll record the motion as passed. Thank you. All right, we'll move to agenda item 3, which is Legistar 90612, relating to 203 through 215 North Blount Street and 710 to 712 East Dayton Street in Alder District 6. This is consideration of an alteration to an approved plan development district general development plan and specific implementation plan PDGDP SIP to allow construction of a 4-story 16-unit multifamily dwelling in place of an approved 8-unit multifamily dwelling, and to allow a change in building material on an existing 2-story 2-unit multifamily dwelling. We would welcome Lisa Ernest, Planner Ernest. If you would introduce this item to us, that would be great.
Thank you. Yep, so this is a consideration of an alteration to an approved plan development GDP SIP, and the alteration would ultimately allow 3 changes. So one would allow a 3-story, 40-foot, 16-unit apartment building to replace an approved 3-story, 35-foot, 8-unit building, and this includes minor changes to the approved site plan. And the project plans, they do show a 40-foot tall building on the plans, but because the maximum allowed building height in the PD is 40 feet, the applicant has indicated that they can lower the height of the roof, and that is required per the recommended conditions of approval. It would also allow an engineered wood siding on the building at 710/712 East Dayton Street. The PD GDP SIP currently requires that the building be covered in wood siding. When the building was relocated from East Johnson, all of the wood siding was removed and replaced with a vinyl siding. Vinyl is not allowed per the approved PD, so they're now asking for approval to use an engineered wood siding. And this would also allow the 3-unit building at 209/211 North Blount Street to be converted into a 2-unit building. A building permit was actually issued for the conversion in 2021. And at that time, the city didn't flag it as requiring an alteration. So this would be a retroactive approval of that change. Major alterations may be approved by the City Plan Commission if the alterations are found to be consistent with the concept approved by the Common Council. And staff believe the proposed alteration is generally consistent with the concept approved by Common Council in 2017. The proposed building height is 3 stories and 40 feet, and buildings more than 8 units are permitted use in this plan development district. The project, we believe, is generally consistent with the adopted plans. Of course, we do acknowledge that the more contemporary comprehensive plan does recommend more intense development than the older Tenny Lapham neighborhood plan. Staff also believe that the project meets some, but not all of the design recommendations in the Tenny Lapham neighborhood plan. But the project does meet the conditions that are identified in the comprehensive plan that indicate a higher density project may be appropriate in this location. And I can provide more details on any of that if you're interested. The staff recommendation is for approval. Thanks.
Thank you. We have registrants for this item, so we'll open the public hearing. And Director Tuttle, would you lead us through our registrants?
All right. I believe we're first going to hear from the applicant, representative of the applicant, Carl Miller, from Renaissance Property Group, registered in support and wishing to speak.
All right. Carl, I think your microphone is live, so welcome.
Hello, good evening. Can everybody hear me all right?
We can.
Excellent. Hi, my name is Carl Miller. I'm an architect at Dimension 4 Madison, and I'm representing the project at 203 North Blount Street. And as Lisa said, this is a alteration to the planned development to allow a 3-story, 40-foot tall, 16-unit multifamily dwelling. So this project's located at the corner of North Blount and East Dayton in the Tenny Lapham neighborhood. It's zoned plan development, general development plan specific implementation plan district, and it's also in the transit overlay development district. So this slide that we're on right now shows the adjacent buildings on the site that are also part of the PD. The red building, for example, is the one that we're talking about changing the siding on. Next slide, please. So this sheet shows the general site plan. All utilities are already brought to the site for the project, and this building will kind of fill in a missing tooth for the neighborhood at the corner of Dayton and Blount. Next slide, please. Next, we have the landscaping plan, and all of the landscaping is installed except for the stuff that's immediately around the proposed building, like right around the foundation. All the street trees are currently installed. Next slide, please. And here's the list and some example images of, back one, please, of the examples of the plants that are specified in the landscaping plan. Now we can go ahead. Thank you. And the next 4 sheets show the floor plans of the proposed building. So this building contains 16 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartments. The garden level is not a story per zoning definitions and as well as building code definitions. So this is truly a 3-story building. If you could skip through to the elevation sheet, please. All right, this first elevation page shows the south elevation facing Blount Street and the west elevation, which is facing inward up to the property. The upper units have private porches. The first floor units have access to grade with private stairs to provide some engagement and interaction with the street. To comply with the height requirement of 40 feet, we intend to lower the slope of the roof. What we're seeing on the plans here is actually about 45 feet. So we were able to reduce the pitch of that roof a little bit in order to get down to the 40-foot mark. Next slide, please. The second elevation page shows the east elevation facing Dayton and the north elevation, which is the primary resident entry at the rear of the building. Next slide, please. And lastly, this slide shows some of the material swatches for the colors and finishes we're planning on the elevations. This includes the engineered wood planned for the 710, 712 East Dayton property. And down in the corner, you can see kind of a 3D image of what you'll see kind of from the corner there. And that's...
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks. That's about time, Carl, if that's all right to wrap up.
All right. Thank you.
All right. I'll note that we also have Michael Maddie, who is with the development team, registered in support and available to answer questions. Next, we'll go to Bob Kleba of District 6, registered neither in support nor opposition and wishing to speak.
Welcome, Bob.
Thank you, commissioners and staff. I'm Bob Kleba, the development chair for the Tenny Lapham Neighborhood Association. Because the District 6 Alder did not coordinate with the Tenny Lapham neighborhood, the neighborhood hadn't the opportunity to provide input on the design or to review the design before the Urban Design Commission's review on the 3rd of December. Typically, the Tenny Lapham neighborhood has a neighborhood meeting with the developer, followed by a steering committee meeting. A report is then provided to UDC and Plan Commission on collaboration between the developer and the neighborhood. But this didn't happen. During the developer's presentation at UDC, several changes were offered to address commissioners' comments. There was also a brief discussion about referring the UDC review until after a neighborhood meeting, but the D6 Alder shut down the referral option. The UDC approved the proposal without changes, in spite of the developer's openness to make changes based on the Commission's comments. In spite of UDC's comments, they were not included in their approval. At our neighborhood meeting after UDC, we heard several comments about the massing of the building and how the design of the front elevation could be improved and make the building appear less massive for the 203 North Plant location. I think it would be productive to refer this proposal back to UDC, which would allow the developer to refine some of the changes they proposed at the UDC meeting. A referral would also allow the neighborhood input on improvements to the design. As always, our collective goal is to make Madison a productive and beautiful place to live. A referral back to UDC will allow us to improve our city and our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Sorry, I lost my window. We also have Nicholas Davies of District 15 registered in support and not wishing to speak, and Claire Herbert of District 6 registered in opposition and not wishing to speak.
All right.
And that is all we have on this item.
Yep. I would ask if there are questions from commissioners for any of our registrants. All right, seeing no raised hands, we'll close the public hearing on this item. And I'll ask if the commission have questions for staff. All right, Commissioner Bazin, thank you.
Yeah, I'm curious. I know one of our registered speakers, Bob Kleba, had mentioned a standard process where the alders work with neighborhood associations to notify them about, like, the urban design committee. Also asked about re-referring. So I guess I'm curious if folks could help me understand, like, are we able to re-refer and what typically happens? Like, how do folks typically learn about UDC meetings?
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to, we refer to it as the pre-application process. So we have a code requirement that requires an applicant to notify a registered neighborhood association, business association, and the alder at least 30 days before they submit. In some cases, they'll inform them well before that 30 days. As I think in this case, they met that 30-day requirement to notify the neighborhood association. So we generally think that, like, within that 30 days, it kind of provides an opportunity for the alder or the neighborhood association to communicate and organize potentially a neighborhood meeting to discuss a project directly with the developer. But it isn't a requirement of our code that the neighborhood meeting be held. And it's generally at the discretion of the alder to kind of organize one that the Common Council organizes. Sometimes other meetings happen, that city staff, for example, won't attend. But that's, so we have the ordinance requirements of the 30-day notification, which the applicant did meet. And then in general, the neighborhood meeting is kind of at the discretion of the alder to host. And sometimes they'll attend just regular neighborhood association meetings on their own. If that answers your question, we can speak to the UDC referral process too, Megan.
Yeah, I was just going to ask Lisa if you could add a little bit about, because I some discussion at the UDC about referral.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so I think at the UDC meeting, it did come up about the question of referring the meeting to a future date to allow for the neighborhood meeting to happen and then for them to return to UDC so they could potentially discuss or update based on feedback from the neighborhood. I will say, having the neighborhood meeting kind of this far in the process is not as typical, but it does happen. So sometimes the neighborhood meeting will happen after an application is submitted just to still allow for that opportunity for engagement. So the UDC that did come up at that meeting, and they chose to recommend approval with the plans with no conditions and move that forward onto Plan Commission. The Plan Commission, I think, could choose to refer it back to UDC if they felt that there was some finding or something that they needed the UDC to make. But ultimately, them reviewing the same plans,
May I ask a follow-up question?
Of course.
Do we know why UDC chose to move it forward opposed to opening it back up for the neighborhood? I'm not sure if I'm asking the question correctly, but I'm just trying to understand the reasoning.
Yeah, I did not attend the meeting, so I don't know the specifics of the discussion, unfortunately. I don't know if any other staff on the call maybe were there or can speak to that a little bit more.
Yeah, I think ultimately the UDC was acting on the application as it was presented to them at the time and was able to find the standards met and recommend approval to the commission. If for some reason there were changes that were brought back to the city, it may have to go back to the UDC at some point in the future. But at this point, a referral back with the existing plan set, they would be re-reviewing the same proposal that they had submitted to you already.
Thanks, Anjali. Did that help answer your question, Commissioner Bazin? Okay. Commissioner Solheim?
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, this site is in the TOD overlay, correct? But changes in terms of, density increase or anything doesn't really apply here because it's the planned development zoning. Is that correct?
Yeah, and it's specifically the way that this plan development text was crafted. So for some plan developments, when they talk about the use list or heights, they might refer to one of our conventional zoning districts. So as allowed in the TRV2 district. And in that case, some of those things may have applied, but because they have created their own height and use list specific to the PD, when I consulted the assistant zoning administrator, she said that the other kind of site requirements about parking locations and those things would apply, but they don't get the density or the height bonuses that are included in TOD.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Other questions for staff? Commissioner Bazin, I still have your hand up, but I think it's just I think it's just still been up. So. Just begging to make sure that I know this alteration is the Plan Commission's the final decision maker on this one, correct? Okay.
Yes, we've determined that based on the application provided that the request is significantly in conformance with the original concept that was approved by the Common Council. So this is an approval by the Plan Commission and it will not go all the way up to the council.
Okay, thanks. I think if there are no other questions, I think we'd be looking for a motion and a second on this item if folks have thoughts on that. Alder Uguer.
Thank you, Chair. I move that the Commission finds that the proposed alteration is consistent with the Plan Development District General Development Plan and Specific Implementation Plan, the PDGDP SIP, approved by the Common Council, And the plan development approval standards all being met, that we approved the request for an alteration to the PD/GDP SIP at 203 to 215 North Blount Street and 710, 712 East Dayton Street, subject to the recommended conditions of the reviewing agencies.
Thanks, Alder Uyghur. Alder Field, thanks for the second. Any discussion on the motion, either the movements or the commission? Alder Uyghur?
Yeah, I just want to say that I appreciate the comments of the registrant in opposition. The written comments that were also presented were very clear about the concerns raised by the Tenny Lapham neighbors. And I think, at least for me, looking at the concerns that Plan Commission was able to consider these and find that we still had something that met all of the requirements and that was reasonably responsive to the concerns of Tenny Lapham neighborhood. Thank you.
Thanks, Alder. Any other discussion? Alder Field?
Thank you, Chair. Just to say that I really appreciate the staff report and the point-by-point comparison to the previously approved concept. I fully agree that this is pretty consistent, certainly consistent enough for this approval. I'm comfortable with UDC's action at this point and hope that next time the Alder will have that neighborhood meeting in advance, and the UDC would have, and the Plan Commission would have that input to consider. It didn't work out this time, but here's hoping for next time. Thank you.
Thanks, Alder Field. Any further discussion? If not, we'll call the vote. Is there objection to unanimous approval for the motion or to Alder Uyghur's motion on the table? I'm seeing none. We will record that item as approved. And thanks for the discussion. Item 3. All right. We will next take up item 6 on our agenda. This is Legistar 90802. This is a substitute approving a certified survey map of property owned by OM Land LLC located at 2150 Commercial Avenue in Alder District 12. And I think, all right, we have Planner Ernest here to introduce the item for us.
Great, thank you. So this is a consideration of a certified survey map to create one lot, one outlot, and dedicate land to the public for a street. I'll note that the CSM does actually propose to create 2 lots, but that lot 2 does not meet the minimum lot size requirement for the industrial limited zoning district, where the minimum lot size requirement is 20,000 square feet, and the proposed lot is just short of that at 19,793. So proposed lot 2 will need to be made into an outlot, which is recommended in the conditions of approval. And in the future, that outlot could be rezoned to a zoning district with a smaller minimum lot size, and then just repotted into a buildable lot. Another correction for the CSM is that it does label that public street as Roth Street, but it will actually be named Coolidge Street and is intended in the future to connect to Coolidge Street to the west. Staff believe that the standards and requirements for lots, blocks, and streets are addressed, subject to the recommended conditions of approval. And we also believe that the applicable approval standards for land divisions can be found met. Thank you.
Thank you. So we will open the public hearing on this item, and I think we do have registrants. And a reminder that each registrant will have 3 minutes to speak, and we'll try to give you an interruption when you get close to the time limit. Again, if you.
All right, I just want to check with Lisa really quickly. Do we know if the applicant team has a presentation?
I did not receive one and did not hear from them, but I did offer them the opportunity to speak,
great,
to present, but without a presentation.
So I'll just note that we do have a registrant, Jonathan Lilly, registered from Beerbecker on behalf of the applicant team. here in support and available to answer questions. Our other registered speaker on this item is Dan Siebel of Milwaukee, registered in opposition and wishing to speak.
Thanks. Dan, you're unmuted, so we should be able to hear you.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
I am one of the owners of the remaining Oscar Mayer site. When I say remaining, this lot that is being created in the CSM is owned by a different entity than us. And we are the owners of the remaining 50 acres or so of the former Oscar Mayer site. This proposal by the applicant is made in connection with their proposed development on the large lot. We objected to and continue to object to that project, and did so at the last Urban Design Commission. At that meeting, the applicant was told to sort of make changes, corrections, etc. So we believe, as a result of that meeting, that the proposed certified survey map here is basically premature, and that should be resolved prior to creating one large lot, which disrupts the connectivity of the Oscar Mayer, former Oscar Mayer site with this site. So I also put in a written objection as well. And I just think that this is not appropriate application considering what occurred at the Urban Design Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
All of our registrants on this item, Chair.
All right. Are there questions from the commission for our registrants or those available to answer questions? Alder Yeager? Oh, you're
for our registrant. You used the term, Dan, of a problem with connectivity. Could you just elaborate on that, by what you mean?
Am I still unmuted?
Oh, yeah, we can hear you, Dan.
Okay, thank you. What I mean by that is that the proposed building on this one lot is 5 stories high, one building, and it sort of creates a blockage to the rest of the development, which the development is intended to be fully connected and visible from Packers. This would block visibility from Packers to the rest of the site and hinder the development and redevelopment of the rest of the site, as it is one long contiguous parcel and building.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Thank you.
Other questions for registrants? Alder Yeager?
Yes, this would be, understand we have someone available from the applicant.
Yep, Mr. Lilly. Yep.
Okay, Mr. Lilly. Thank you. Mr. Lilly, could you comment on this concern about the visual obstruction to visibility on the rest of the site? And
yes, sir. I can do that. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you. Thanks.
Yes. So as he mentioned, we're working with staff. We're working through the UDC process for the development of what's labeled as Lot 1 of the development. We did hear comments. We did hear feedback from staff during the review process in the initial UDC meeting. We have continued to coordinate and meet with staff. In fact, we're meeting with them again later this week to continue to work through their comments and make sure we're working to address those for a resubmittal in the coming months. So we're aware of the comments he's speaking of. We are working to address those with the with staff and with UDC, and plan to resubmit in the coming months.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alder Yeager. Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing on this item and move to time for questions for staff. Alder Yeager, thanks.
Thank you. For staff, I think at this commission, we are accustomed to seeing a combination of certified plat as well as conditional use and any demolition required, which isn't here. But I just, if you would comment on doing these things separately and looking at the result later that we might see in the conditional use permit application.
Yeah, so specifically for this project, the proposed lot 1 is already zoned regional mixed use, which is a very permissive zoning district and allows by right large multifamily and mixed use buildings. So in this case specifically, the building that they're proposing on lot 1 is actually a permitted use. So it's a permitted use 5-story mixed use building, which means that it won't be reviewed by Plan Commission, and that the certified survey map is really the only kind of land division, or Plan Commission approval that the project requires at this time. So I think it's kind of a newer process for us. I'll admit that, with the recent proactive rezonings that we're seeing in other parts of the city, including the Oscar Mayer site, that by rezoning the property to regional mixed use, we kind of allow some of these uses by right. And I do think we'll continue to see that more often going forward.
Okay,
but generally, we do see them together. If it's a conditional use in a land division, we try to make sure those are being reviewed at the same time.
And Lisa, could you just refresh us with regard to the URP or the UDC involvement in this particular project and what will happen there?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So the site is still in an urban design district, so UDD 4, and that means that the Urban Design Commission is an approving body for the building. So they do review the building for compliance with the standards in UDD 4, which are outlined in our code. And so they typically will do like an informational presentation for a larger project like this, where they just kind of give kind of informal feedback, and then the applicant can apply for approval. And in some cases, the UDC can refer it to allow the applicant to update the application. Sometimes they provide an initial approval, allow them to come back, and sometimes they will approve it just at one meeting. So in this case, they've referred it to allow the applicant to update their plans to address their comments. And ultimately, the building, can't be constructed until they get through that approval process with UDC.
Thank you.
And I'll just add, Lisa, that was an excellent summary. Typically, as Alder Ugair had noted, these applications or these different considerations will come before you at one time. In this case, because the UDC can approve the project independent of any approval from the Plan Commission, it is not required that you refer the CSM. I would note that under state statute, we have 90 days from the time of application to either approve, conditionally approve, or deny a CSM, or it may be deemed approved. In this case, due to the city's review schedules, the deadline for that action, or I should say that that approval will be forwarded to the City Council for their January 13th meeting. So we do have an obligation to be responsive to the CSM that's in front of us.
Thanks. Thanks, Megan and Lisa. Any other questions for staff? If not, I wonder if we're ready to move to a motion on this item. Commissioner Solheim, thank you.
I'll move that the Plan Commission find the approval standards for CSMs are met and forward the CSM for 2150 Commercial Avenue to the council with a recommendation of approval subject to the conditions in the staff report, including the condition that lot 2 be considered an outlot.
Great. And then just as you're wrapping that up, there was an addendum to the staff report.
Oh, and addendum. Thank you.
Yes.
You even had that up and I forgot it. Yes.
Yeah.
Including the addendum.
Thank you. Alder Glenn, is that a second? Thank you. I will Any other discussion on the motion? Megan, have we adequately covered the staff report in the addendum?
Yes, thank you for catching me.
Yeah. Yep, you got it. All right, any discussion on this item? All right, we'll call a vote. Is there any objection to unanimous approval for the motion on the table with regard to item 6? All right, seeing none, we'll record that as approved. Thanks everybody. That will bring us to items 20 and 21 on our agenda, which we'll discuss together. And I think we might do them. We might do Southeast before Southwest, but I'm going to read them as they're laid out in the agenda. Item 20 is Legistar 88388, Planning Division Staff Update on our Southwest Area Plan. And item 21 is Legistar 88389, Planning Division Staff Update on the Southeast Area Plan. And I think we're going to start with Planner Knair and Gregor. So you guys have the floor and welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, for welcoming us and allowing us to be here tonight, and for having a great consent agenda that made it all go faster. I'm going to share the presentation that I have here. Are you all able to see the presentation?
We are.
Okay, good. I'm leaving it in a PDF because I had a terrible technical difficulties at Transportation Commission that was terrible. So I'm doing it this way tonight. So the last time we were here to visit with you, I think we were up in room 215 and we were having lots of good conversations about where we were headed with kind of the larger two planning areas. And so I'll start with a little bit about where we've been since that conversation. And so this is the agenda that I'm going to go through tonight. So the Southeast area is bounded by State Highway 30 on the north, Sigel Road on the south, and then the interstate on the east, and Lake Monona and the city of Monona basically on the west. It has, just over 11,000 housing units as of the 2020 census, a little over 25,000 people, and about 26% are Black, Indigenous, people of color, and Hispanic Latinx. So we've had a very busy public engagement schedule over the last year. We've had many in-person open houses and a virtual meeting. We had interactive commenting mapping, which was a really great way to kind of allow people to comment at their own time. We had 2 surveys, one that was sent out to a variety, a random number of people in each of the planning areas, and then a follow-up survey for those that answered. We had our Madison Madness bracket last March during the basketball season. We had over 1,400 people sign up and do that, which was a really great kind of alternative engagement. We've had meetings with neighborhood associations, schools, school districts, our neighborhood resource teams, and others. We both used the UW People program, both at Memorial and at La Follette for our Southeast area. And then we also partnered with the Nina Collective to host some focus group meetings, including a recent focus group meeting that we just had. We've done pop-up outreach, a neighborhood walk, bike to work week. We did a business walk in this area, which was in both areas, which was really beneficial in the Southeast in particular because of all of the businesses are there. And then the check-ins that we had, and probably some of the most impactful engagement we had was during, at least for Southeast, our community action strategies at events at Highstand and Honeysuckle Park. You can see us painting some stencils up on a basketball court here. And we had a backpack and school supply giveaway right in August, right before school started. And we were able to connect with a lot of families in the neighborhoods that we couldn't reach through our other kind of typical engagement strategies. So we had several families from the Milwaukee Street Family Shelter that came over that we were able to talk to about their neighborhood, as well as some larger apartment complexes. And it was really very rewarding and fulfilling. And I think it was a really great example of the type of engagement that we enjoy doing and feel good about. We've talked to the people as we've come in here about how there's different ways that feedback gets into plan. You all know this, but it's nice to remind ourselves that we get lots of public feedback. Some of it falls under our existing city policy and programs, and that's great. We let people know that. Some of it is outside of the plan and is passed along to relevant partners or city agencies. And then, of course, there's some feedback that do eventually become actions in the draft area plan. So our land use highlights, this is sort of just a bubble map to give you the broad spectrum of the Southeast area. And so, what we heard from people was that they wanted to support more mixed use areas and destinations within walking distance, allow for more housing options and affordable housing. So our draft actions really tried to accomplish this in 3 different ways: increasing allowable development along mixed use intensity along the transit corridors, thinking about some potential new mixed use nodes for neighborhoods, and supporting additional housing in places that we think it fits the best. And as I mentioned the last time we came here, my colleague Jeff Greger talked about how we really have to be change agents in the neighborhood. And I think that we tried to use the feedback that we got and the graphics that we used and the outreach that we did to try to continually educate neighbors and residents and business owners about what is it the plans are and aren't. And that education continues as you'll see as we go through this presentation. I'm not going to cover this again because we talked a lot about adding in a low, medium residential 1 or medium residential 1 into our housing kind of matrix. But I put that up here because that's how we continue to talk about it with residents, and because this will be the start with the Southeast and Southwest plans that will have the first plans that have that medium residential 1. So here is our existing GFLU on the left. And our proposed GFLU on the right. I'm going to walk us through a few of the changes. So in some cases, we've gone from LR and LMR to that medium residential 1 that we've talked about to try to increase the density along transit corridors and places where we think it works the best. So you can see along Milwaukee Street here, we've increased that from LR into that MR1 because we think that that's where that LR could also have been escalated up. The same goes with areas along Cottage Grove Road. We've moved them into LMR and MR1, and then we've increased that density along Monona Drive here by Buckeye as well. In a couple areas, we've gone from G, C, and E. As we said, we'd sharpen our pencils a bit. So we've gone for some areas that used to be G, C, and E, and we've changed those to mixed use. You can see that in the site here, right in the corner of 30 and 51, and then also in front of Woodman's, and also in areas along Milwaukee Street. And then new mixed use nodes and increasing that in from NMU to CMU along Cottage Grove Road. And then we've also added a couple of new mixed use nodes. One that would be on the parking lot of the SSM Health Building. We think that's a large parking lot and could potentially have more mixed use along it. And as part of a lot of conversations that we heard with District 16, that really talked about how there wasn't a lot of walkable places in their neighborhood. We've shown this potential of a CMU right here at Vondron and Buckeye, because it's a place that kind of connects down. It's the one street that connects down really well into this industrial area, so there's some good connectivity there. One of the things that we've really learned here is about how city planning has shaped some of the issues that we're dealing with now, because everything kind of west of 51 was built just immediately after kind of World War II, and it's a lot more street grid and connected, where once we go to the west of 51 that was built more in the late 60s and 70s and 80s, we have a lot more cul-de-sacs, a lot fewer street connections, and one of the things that we really miss in that area is we don't have any really good north-south connections. And so we're trying to use the streets that we have to help make those nodes. As I've said, we've tried to, yes.
Sorry, just really quickly as you transition to this slide.
Yes.
Would you mind using the full name of the zone, the future land use categories as
yes, of course,
just for clarity? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Megan. So we've talked about, as I said, increasing added density along the transit corridor. So along the transit corridor, we have a lot more of the neighborhood mixed use and the community mixed use in places that have the best transit. We've also added in that medium residential 1 that you see along here in Milwaukee Street. If you look at Cottage Grove Road, and I've really zoomed into this area because it's easier to see. Along Cottage Grove Road, we have increased community mixed use at the nodes with some of the best transit. Along here, almost as often as some of the BRT routes, we have really good transit here. And then as we go further east on Cottage Grove Road, we have increased some of the areas that used to be residential to of various types to more neighborhood mixed use and added in some low medium residential as well. One of the things that really is still up in the air for us, and I think will be even at the time we have a final plan, is the land use impacts that the U.S. Highway South Stoughton Road 51 with the WISDOT project. They're currently doing a South Stoughton Road design study. And depending upon, in the simplest terms, if they choose to go towards a route of 45 miles per hour with limited access, the future land uses probably need to stay very similar to what they are today, with having commercial uses, employment uses, perhaps a little mixed use and a neighborhood mixed use node here at Flom Road because of the pedestrian crossings that happen at Flom. But it probably will stay pretty much like it is. If there is an opportunity that if WISDOT recognizes the opportunity to really transform this corridor into a 35 mile an hour urban boulevard, those future land uses could, completely change. And we could see, back of the envelope calculations of $500 million or more in terms of like new development that could happen with a community mixed use along in there that could really make that transition from the existing neighborhood and La Follette High School that's here to a more urban style design. We have dreams of a future BRT route that could go down such a facility. You can see a couple of very kind of loose diagrams over here on the right that just kind of show what that wide boulevard could potentially be. What happens in the middle, still up in the air because that is land that would be owned by WISDOT, but we could talk and further refine ideas about having, interconnected multi-use paths, bike facilities, other recreational facilities, and it could also really help make those street crossings much safer and just allow there to be a lot more connectivity along both sides of 51. So this is an alternative that we don't have answers to yet because it really will depend upon which way Wisconsin Department of Transportation goes ultimately. But we really want to put out a case for why we think a wide boulevard with its potential connections and redevelopment could really transform the southeast side of Madison. Another potential transformative space would be the former American Family office building that you can see. This illustration shows the existing building remaining in some way that could be a mixed use with some a variety of housing that could be around it. It could be kind of a complete neighborhood. It could still be really a complete neighborhood, even if it didn't have that mixed use in the middle because of the connections down to Milwaukee Street. But we've really showed a couple of options here. So we're, we'd love to hear your thoughts on those options. But we're kind of giving out two ideas that we think could both be great outcomes. Another illustration that we're using is really just re-emphasizing our Cottage Grove Road Activity Centers plan that was done several years ago, and that's already started to transform the Cottage Grove Road corridor quite a bit, and just emphasizing that should still continue to happen. This one shows what could happen on the existing Walgreens site and bank site, and how that could kind of complete some of the development that's happening here. Our last illustration really shows at how we could potentially create a better use for the Salvation Army, formerly Carmenta Nursing Home family shelter site on Milwaukee Street, showing that it could be redeveloped as a neighborhood mixed use project, could continue to have a shelter in it if that is the direction that it goes, but could also provide some more housing as well because it's so close to a park. It's on Milwaukee Street, has great transit service. Some of our transportation highlights, and when I talked about the education and the change management that we're doing, this is really at the crux of that. We are still talking to people about how the sidewalk policy has changed since many plans done, and it's no longer, new sidewalks are no longer assessed to individual property owners. I'm at meetings where people learn that for the first time all of the time. And I think it's really essential to continue to save them, to put that message out there, because we want a more interconnected neighborhoods. Both Lake Edge and Glendale neighborhoods are two of the neighborhoods in Madison that really have fewer sidewalks than many of the others. And so we continue to talk with how the areas without sidewalks are unsafe for children and pedestrians, that there are many schools. All of these black squares are schools and school facilities, how we need to connect them in. We do start a priority. We talk about Spanum as a priority, a few others, Maher, that we think are priorities to get done, but we've been emphasizing that in our engagement. We've also heard a lot about unsignalized crossings are safe, and speeding on Thompson Drive in particular, way at the north here. And the reason I show this map is because it is affecting land use in terms of, these are also many of the intersections and streets where we want to see more density and new development. So with that, we also want to see intersection improvements and corridor improvements so that those land uses and new developments have great crossings and are more walkable. We also have some highlights on street network, bicycles, and multi-use paths. I can kind of skip through that for now. But some of our additional highlights are really increasing the supply of affordable housing, ensure sufficient support for unhoused residents, and also examining many of the city-owned sites that could be considered for affordable housing. There are several, and they could be considered and looked at for the future. We also would like to evaluate Urban Design District number 1. That's something we've been talking with other city planning staff about as staff goes through their kind of overhaul of the urban design districts as a whole. Potentially Urban Design District 1 could be rethought, how it's used and how it's working, and also establishing those commercial core design areas where we expect the most dense development. One of the other thing that we really heard during many of our engagement was how the Southeast side has several notable things that has happened to it over time that reminds everybody of what things used to be. There was an old East Side Businessmen's Association carnival that was always on the Voigt property many, many years ago. There was the Central Storage Butter Fire of 1991 that comes up at so many meetings as these are the things that, if there's art and placemaking, might be a way to help people kind of keep the character and remember some of the history that has happened in the Southeast side. We also, as I mentioned, have a lot of businesses in this area. As you can see, there's a lot of the density, the employment density really centers around that business district. But there's also some city-owned sites in the Southeast business district that we could reposition and think about using in different ways, or trying to subdivide and make them more attractive to redevelopment. And we'd also like to work with our friends in economic development to think about a new TID district, tax incremental district, depending upon if there is a good project to start that out, to make sure that there is an impetus to start that. We've talked a lot about the parks master planning process that needs to continue. That will kind of finish up at the tail end of our process here. So at this point, we're just talking about supporting that park development process. In terms of effective government, there's been a lot of talk about noise pollution, lighting in the neighborhoods, and the heat island effect that many of these areas have because of lack of street trees. And is there a place to think about cooling centers? And there's also the public engagement that will start to come with the Village of McFarland intergovernmental agreement. So the feedback that we've gotten so far, and so this is just since we have put these out to the public since October 21st, so just in the last month and a half, we've gotten some concern about limiting residential in G, C, and E, even if we increase density elsewhere. People are really encouraged by additional mixed use areas and would maybe even want us to put more in. We've heard comments about considering an accessory commercial use that could happen in residential areas. And then there continues to be mixed feelings on the safety issues for the future of Stoughton Road. But we have really heard that many people agree, though, that the 35-mile-per-hour boulevard does promote more desirable land use opportunities. So we're starting to have people understand that implication, even if they have kind of mixed feelings about how that road will actually function. So here we are in December, and we're really going through our draft actions with boards, commissions, and committees. We're getting feedback from various commissions and committees, checking in with the folks that we've talked to so far. And now, once we kind of finish this phase, we're going to be putting together that draft plan in its entirety for the next phase of review. So with that, I will stop unless we want to talk about, Megan, I don't know if we want to talk about them separately, if we want to talk about them together, but we're here to listen to your thoughts on the Southeast area if the commission is ready to do so.
I'll leave it to the chair if you'd like to pause here and take questions and comments.
Yeah, I think it might be good. I mean, I think it might be good if people have comments about Southeast area to talk about those before we move to the other plan. But I think also hang around because maybe there might be some joint ones. Alder Glenn, you're up first.
Thank you. First of all, thank you. This was great to see and see the whole plan. And thank you, Megan, for asking. I'm the person that was sitting in the room that didn't know what all the acronyms meant. And so I appreciate you, Megan, saying to spell them out because I probably wouldn't have done it for myself. I would have looked them up later. So thanks.
Credit to Alder Figueroa-Cole too for asking.
Okay. Okay. Of course. Thank you, Alder. Okay. A couple of questions I seen in the beginning, and I had asked this question at Parks the other night. That around the population being, I think it was like 25 point something percent.
Yep, almost 26.
Do you, when knowing that when we're doing surveys or community engagement, is there a collection then there of demographics? Are we knowing that we're hearing back from at least trying to hit that number of 25% or close?
I do not believe that we are hitting that number, despite our efforts, honestly, which is why we have worked with the Nina Collective on purposely going out and doing focus groups and a deeper dive with Spanish speaking and other Black, Indigenous, and people of color. So we have stressed that. And that's also why we did such a more involved public engagement effort at Honeysuckle and Highstead Parks. If we add those two events in, which I think we're probably 80 to 85% Black, Indigenous, and people of color, Hispanic, and Latinx, maybe we are that close. Actually, I mean, those were really wonderfully attended events where we had wonderful interactions with neighbors that don't normally come to meetings. So as I think about it, Alder, I would have to look up the number, but I think we're probably closer than my my first thought was, because we have been working very diligently on trying to reach those, I just think that we never do enough. So I think that we can always continue to improve.
Thank you. And thank you for explaining that and the intentionality behind it. I had talked to Alderfield about that with the Highstead Park last time. So I knew that turned out to be a really great event. The other question is, and maybe this isn't a time for now, but I would love to see some of the city-owned property in those areas, and that's connected to, I love the idea of what you brought up about Carmenta. I remember when it was first closing, I kept thinking that would make a perfect, like, one community, one bedroom, communal kitchen kind of a space for like a developer, right? Like, because it already has the rooms and then it's got this big community kitchen. But is there a way to see, like, for this specific, what the city?
Sure. I know I don't have it on a slide. I don't know if
I could
Jeff,
get it emailed it to me later.
Yeah, oh,
I
absolutely. We do have a list of the city-owned parcels in our larger document. I'm only asking Jeff because maybe he can find it while I answer some of the other questions.
Okay.
I'm gonna let Jeff look that up while I continue to answer some questions, but we do have that list.
All right. And thank you again for the presentation. I appreciate all the information. Yeah.
Thanks. Commissioner Sanders.
Thank you, Chair. I want to echo all of the comments from Alder Glenn. I do also really appreciate this presentation. I understand, I have questions about the US 51 project and how it kind of hits this particular project. I understand there's a lot we're not sure of yet, but just understanding that it seems to me that we're going to have a draft area plan possibly before WSDOT makes its final determination. And I'm just wondering, if this plan is going to be in effect for 10 years, are we going to have an opportunity to go back and revise these general land uses if WSDOT makes a determination towards that boulevard idea?
That's exactly kind of the issue, right? Because the last time, about 2006, 2008, that WSDOT was doing a plan for this area, or a plan, they did a design a long time ago. We went ahead and changed our land use to match what was their preferred design, and then they didn't build it. And so until we redid our comprehensive plan in 2018, we had some mismatched land uses that we didn't fix. And so the comp plan was really our chance to do that. We don't want to make that same mistake. So I think in general, our plan is at this point is to show the 45 mile per hour limited land use as our land use, but make sure that we have in this plan that we think that there's this alternative, so that there'll be a very clear nexus for changing the GFLU categories if that design gets chosen. Now, we might want to wait until it actually goes out to be built too. So even if it gets chosen, I think we'll probably have enough time to think in one of our land use updates, comprehensive plan updates, to change the land use to match it once development or once that construction has started. Because I really don't want to fall into that trap that we did 15 years ago or 20 years ago. And have mismatched land uses. So we're kind of planting our flag in the plan, saying this is what we could do, and using it as a way to influence WSDOT at this point, hopefully. And then if WSDOT makes what we think is the right decision, we'll have this to kind of back it up and ready to change those land uses. Does that answer your question, Commissioner?
I think so. If I can just repeat it back. So we're going to plant our flag one way in the plan, but we're going to try to leave some sort of suggestibility for what could come in the future that is more in line with what we hope. And through comp plan updates or other similar changes, we might be able to go in and make those updates as needed.
Yes, but by showing both of these maps in the plan, we can kind of show that nexus. So we're going to have the GFLU look like the 45 mile an hour in this plan, but we're going to have like a big sidebar that says if construction starts and it's a plan that's 35 mile per hour and is a more urban, I don't even know if that has to be a complete boulevard everywhere, but especially kind of between Buckeye and Flom, this more urban roadway, then we're saying our recommendation would be to change the land use plan at that point.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Rebecca, I found the map here. If I could share.
Yeah, go ahead.
See if it lets me. There we go. So these are parcels, excuse me, in the Southeast Madison Business Park. I believe these are the ones you were talking about, Rebecca.
Yeah, I was. There's also a list of several other city-owned sites that we've talked about. There's the Carmenta site. There is a water utility site. That should be it should be a list. There we go. And those are the fire. Those are the ones owned by fire. Those are less available for residential uses.
I'm not finding that other list right off the bat, but these were the majority of the sites.
Yeah, those are the majority of the sites that the city owns for potential development of commercial uses and employment and industrial uses. There was a few, like they're on Milwaukee Street, Carmenta. We'll get you the list, Alder. I'll get you a list of them.
Why don't we share the list? Yeah.
We will share a list, but also the former bus transfer station is another city-owned parcel. There's a few of them.
Alderfield.
Thank you, Chair. I had a couple of points I wanted to share, but just first, wanted to offer a comment that this has been a tremendous engagement process so far. It included meeting residents exactly where they already are, and I think that's absolutely the best way to go, to hear from more voices. And, I appreciate all the work in the planning, including making things work when the logistics change last minute at some events. I think that the land uses generally are pretty great. The shifts in land use, focusing them on the transit corridors. I'm really happy to see many of these. I had a question about the section on the eastern side of Stoughton Road in between Buckeye and Flom, which currently, unlike the rest of the area, is not proposed to move into one of the purple mixed use categories, but remain industrial. I'm wondering if there's a reason for that, and if so, if you could elaborate.
Okay. You said east of on Flom Road.
Between Flom and Buckeye on either side of Helgeson. Yep. Or north of there. Yeah. Right there.
So why we're leaving them industrial?
Correct.
So we see this industrial and commercial use as like the heart of employment in the southeast side. And so we were reluctant to kind of move into that with any other residential at this point. We think that it is absolutely an amazing idea to do it where the red is shown, right? On the west side of 51. But we were trying to look at that 10-ish year horizon and think about where we would like it to happen first so that we can create neighborhoods that are connected and whole and not kind of mismatched. I could see if the wide boulevard comes, if we have BRT, if that redevelopment on the west side of 51 goes really well, I think then maybe we could consider thinking about the other side of the street along that area that you're talking about. I think we weren't ready for that yet.
So you're describing more of an intention of a transition kind of between residential and industrial.
Yes.
Is that right? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
we don't really talk about that. However, maybe we could. We just and that might be a really good thing to put in our explanation. But we wanted to put it where it should go first to make sure that it's successful, and then we can see how successful it is and if those transformations happen, because we don't want to lose many of the very affordable commercial and industrial and employment uses that are in that business park yet. But there could be a place for that in the future.
Sure. So that plus your point about the timing and thinking realistically here makes sense to me. Thank you.
Sure.
I had a question, or I guess a suggestion about transportation. Thinking about the additional housing units coming to the Starkweather neighborhood at the Voigt Farm site. There is existing bus service every half an hour, and I'm thinking ahead to when we have an additional more than 1,000 households there with less probably access to parking than we typically consider in our neighborhoods. So I just wanted to suggest a consideration for the future transit demand going through that point, especially if some of the higher intensity mixed use parcels proposed or contemplated around the Woodman's site also change at some point. This is my commuter route. I'll just own that.
Yeah.
And up until this point, during peak hours, we have very few seats left by the time we get far into the city up to East Wash. So just something I'd suggest considering or talking to Metro about.
Or future casting it at least a little bit, saying this, more frequent routes might be needed if, development continues.
Absolutely. I had a suggestion that I don't want to get too far ahead to the southwest, but I noticed a difference between in the culture and character section. There's recognition of a lack of third spaces and some suggestion about connection making using existing space here. And something caught my attention in the Southwest plan, suggesting in their partnership section, working with stakeholders to locate a community center when and if, and then some conditions that make that actually possible, recognizing that that's not driven by the city directly.
Right.
I wanted to suggest alignment between the two plans on that point, because if there's a difference, it suggests or implies that there's a need here but not there, right? And so I think it would be the most appropriate, because it is clearly a need in this plan as well, but
clearly
I think it would be the most appropriate if we're saying the same thing about that need.
I think that's an excellent suggestion. I will work with them on that language.
Sure, I appreciate that. That's it for me. Thank you so much. I'm really excited about this project and that we're at this point.
Thank you, Alderfield.
Thanks, Alderfield. Commissioner Wisniewski.
Thank you, Chair. And Rebecca, again, thank you for the excellent presentation and summary of everything to date. I have a question, just wondered if you could speak a little bit more. One of the things just caught my attention was the concern about limiting residential in the GC and E areas. And are you able to speak a little bit more about that?
Sure. So when we came to the Plan Commission a while ago, when we were talking about some of the issues with that we were seeing with the escalated LMR, low medium residential, as well as development that was happening in commercial areas, because it's allowed in many of the zoning districts, and talking about trying to be intentional about where we want strictly commercial and employment uses and where we want mixed uses. And our plan is to come back to the Plan Commission at some point, once we have some language, to try to reduce residential uses in areas where we really think it's not appropriate. And we really don't think it's appropriate, adjacent to a rural highway kind of section, like on 51, right? So, where we've left that red, where Farm and Fleet, which we hope stays forever, right? It's all the other things can go first. Where that development could happen. I think some of this came from the decision for residential uses near the Home Depot site on Verona Road, which was in kind of a similar Highway 18, 151 and Highway 51 have similar characteristics in terms of being unfriendly to pedestrians and not having access across the road that feels safe. And so we were really trying to use these two plans as an example of putting mixed use where we really want it, and limiting those commercial and employment uses, and industrial for that matter, where we really don't think residential should be at this point.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to emphasize, that last point that Rebecca was making. We talked a lot about the fact that some of the areas that had previously been recommended for general commercial or employment future land uses have evolved themselves, or the areas near and around them have evolved. And so using these planning processes as an opportunity to look more closely at those areas, and you can see lots of examples of this in this map in particular, but using this process to focus on areas that we would recommend that mixed use, including residential uses, could be appropriate in the future. But then kind of staying true to the plan recommendations for the general commercial and employment districts, the general commercial and employment future land use areas when we think about actually implementing the plans through our zoning code. So this is an example, as Rebecca noted, of the first kind of maps that would apply that sort of thinking.
Then I have a follow-up question because maybe I was misunderstanding it. It's on the slide for feedback on draft land use actions and the first bullet point. So the concern is coming from staff because it just makes it seem like it's coming from the general public about limiting residential and GC&E even if we increase density elsewhere. Am I just reading that wrong?
I think that came from a public comment. That point that Rebecca had shared on the slide came from a public comment.
We had a public comment.
That's the one that I was most concerned about.
Okay. No, staff feels very strongly that we should be putting mixed use where mixed use is and trying to keep general commercial in places that we think are inhospitable to residential uses. But we did have a comment from somebody out there, feedback saying, hey, I still think that there are places and commercial uses that could have residential. So we were just trying to be honest with the feedback that we get.
And to be clear, I mean, I think this will come up again when we talk about Southwest probably a bit. Rebecca noted about some of the land use compatibility concerns that we think about when we're making recommendations for future land use. Things like transportation, access to amenities, connectivity to complete neighborhoods, the ability for neighborhoods to be completed within a reasonable period of time. But also on the flip side, we think about the benefits that commercial and employment centers offer to the city as well. And Rebecca already mentioned that a bit in answering Alderfield's question about why we didn't recommend mixed use on the east side of 51. We have a lot of really strong and viable commercial centers that provide good jobs for the city. They provide business opportunities. And so we also try to think about the balance of making sure that a wide range of needs are met for the city on the whole as we grow over time. So it's a combination of both things, and each specific location where we think about making proposed changes might have a little bit of different combination of factors that went into play in terms of making that recommendation. But it's not, I want to just be clear, it's not only about where we don't think housing should go because it's inhospitable. It's also about where we want to make sure we have good, strong, viable employment centers as well.
Thank you.
Emily, I see Alder Pritchett's hand.
I'm sorry, Alder Pritchett. Sorry, I had my own mute button on. Sorry,
one quickie question. You know, given that you're now beginning to look at and or to address, areas that would be considered inhospitable, to residents in a particular area, especially in the commercial or industrial area. What's the current status then of the development that's proposed by the Home Depot area?
Alder Pritchett, if I could I ask you to take that one offline, since I think that's going to be out of scope for this Southeast area plan discussion.
Okay, well, what other? Yeah, all right, but then I have a follow-up question too. And this question, relates to, when we think about the West Area Plan, and now we're talking about the Southeast Area Plan, would it be fair to ask then what lessons were learned as a result of looking at and or addressing the concerns of the West Area Plan that you now have incorporated into the Southeast Area Plan?
That's a great question, Alder. I think that we did learn about some of the things that were discussed in the West Area Plan, especially around the use of low, medium residential and the escalator clause that allowed it, there to be more density than people were expecting in some areas, which is why we wanted to kind of be a little bit more clear in the types and density of housing that would be allowed in different areas. So we went through a discussion with the Plan Commission, with others. I will go back to this slide, where we talked about the old land use categories are here on the right, where we just had a low residential and a low medium residential. And then there were these asterisks that talked about when higher densities and more types of housing could happen. And we saw that there was a really big leap between low, medium residential and medium residential. And so we worked with a lot of different staff from different agencies and the Plan Commission on creating this new medium residential 1 category. And that medium residential 1 category tries to split that difference between low, medium and medium residential so that low, medium residential can still try to fit in that missing middle that we really want to see in different places throughout the city to help make those complete neighborhoods. But maybe weren't quite as dense as what we had as the old medium residential, the old MR. So this medium residential 1 is really kind of the embodiment of what was being proposed in some of those developments that were using that escalator clause. Because as you know, staff thought there was wonderful things about a lot of those developments. But because they were sort of, I don't want to say hidden, but because they were kind of part of these asterisks, which it just meant people couldn't understand as well what could happen on a site. And so this is just trying to be kind of more transparent about what types of housing could go where, and showing that range and creating, so removing these asterisks in these plans in the Southeast and Southwest and trying to just be more clear. And as we go through the area plans, we expect to do this to future plans. I hope that answers your question, Alder.
It answers part of the question, because what I'm driving at is this. You mentioned, some individuals were not kind of up to speed on what was happening. And my question then concerns populations then that would fall into the category of BIPOC individuals or residents. And ask, when we think about the plan, both the West Area Plan as well as looking at the Southeast Area Plan, of the groups that would occupy, some of these areas, would it be fair to ask that many of these individuals would fall into the category then of being BIPOC individuals and or individuals whose socioeconomic status differs greatly from those, let's say, that are included in the West Area Plan?
I'm not really sure how to address your question, Alder. I know that when we look to have more density and more affordable housing and more places for people to live, we tried to find just the best places for those to be, where people could be the most connected to services, commercial uses, neighborhood centers, transit, jobs, and employment, so that we weren't creating isolated pockets of development. And when you have isolated affordable housing that isn't connected to those things, that's when it becomes much harder to live in a place that isn't connected. And so we really wanted to stress that let's put additional density on places where you can have the full range of city needs around you, and within close proximity. So that's how we looked at it, is where do we put density, whether that be affordable or market rate or whatever rent it can be, but making sure that anybody that lives on those transit corridors and in those higher density areas have access to things. So that's what we looked at, is that nexus of transportation and land use coming together, whoever lives there.
Okay, one follow-up question. In putting together or looking at the Southeast Area Plan, have you taken into consideration, working with the health department to look at what added stressors, health-wise, would be placed upon individuals who are in areas that would be considered industrial, commercial areas, especially when one puts up, high density structures. I'm really thinking about those individuals who would suffer most, from pollutants as a result of living in an area that they have no control over, especially from an industrialized, perspective.
Sure.
That's a huge concern that I have.
We have talked in our draft actions about making sure that noise pollution is considered in terms of that American Family site that's up at the north, kind of the northeast corner. Actually, it's the southeast corner of 30 and 51. It's just at the north of the map. To make sure that, if we see a complete neighborhood and new developments that could happen on a formerly employment site, to make sure that there is a noise pollution measures in place. So we talked about that in our draft actions. We also, again, have talked about the design of that Highway 51 and how if it was an urban boulevard that had that was slower traffic and had more crossings, it in itself would also be a healthier place to live than the kind of rural highway cross section that it is now. We have talked with public health, probably not to the extent maybe that you're talking about, but a lot of these industrial areas, it's not heavy industrial. It's really light industrial uses, and employment of all kinds. It's amazing what all the different things that are happening in this business district. So I don't know that we were concerned about kind of industrial pollutants. I don't think that really came up during our conversations with neighbors and the public health.
Well, I think it is and it should be a concern, especially when we think about the types of pollutants that are out there. And I'm not just talking about noise pollutants now. I'm talking about things that people inhale, and we don't know that they are inhaling it and the long-lasting effects of it. And so for that reason, when we look at high-density areas and we think about the children that will be living in those areas, the inhalation of some products, some chemicals, et cetera, will have long-lasting effects. So that's why I'm asking the question, have we done a public health assessment? Because that's critical in terms of where we put people and what their exposures, and I use the term exposures, will be as a result of that. If we don't do that, are we creating yet another monster?
Yeah, we have not done that kind of assessment, Alder. We have looked at noise pollution because of the highway. That's why I brought that up. We have not looked at that in terms of the employment and light industrial uses.
Yeah, and I would just add here that in terms of a kind of formal like health impact assessment, that has not been part of our process. However, I think as Rebecca mentioned, and I said earlier too, one of the things that we broadly think about is how adjacent land uses connect to each other and how they support or conflict with one another. And this map that Rebecca has up on the screen is a good example of where you can see the large areas that are gray and pink are areas that are recommended in the future for industrial or commercial kinds of uses, and are areas that we are ultimately not recommending for the future that would include high density residential uses or mixed uses that would include residential, at least at the time being, with the conditions that exist there today. So that's part of that transition discussion that Rebecca mentioned earlier. Alder, happy to talk more offline with you about how over time, how the city has kind of incrementally been changing, how we have seen some examples of new projects that have maybe been in locations where we could have some concerns about health impacts, and ultimately about the relationship between our long-range planning and the tools that we can use and are able to use to implement our plans. We can talk about that a little bit more fully if you'd like.
I would greatly appreciate that, because as I said before, when I think about some properties that were formerly used for, let's just use an example, a service station, a gas station, where they are now required to remove those tanks that are there. There's still residual stuff that's there. So it's that kind of a thing that I would really, really, really appreciate a robust discussion about. Thank you.
Thanks, Alder. So this is the Southeast Area Plan update. Again, there's not action on either of these. These are both updates, but I wonder if we could shift to the Southwest Plan update. And I know we have Planner Martin and Planner Zellers here to help us through those. So I'll welcome you guys.
Yes, thank you. Let me go ahead and share my screen here.
Ben, if you could just make sure to talk right into your microphone. It felt a little quiet there when you first started.
Is this a little bit better?
Yeah.
Okay. So my name is Ben Zellers, co-project manager along with Urvashi Martin of the Southwest Area Plan. We have somewhat of an abbreviated presentation since Rebecca was able to cover a lot of the stuff that is shared in common between the two area plans. So just a quick bit of background, public engagement, some highlights of draft actions, especially with regard to land use and transportation. And then just a snapshot of public feedback on draft actions. Southwest area, bounded by the Beltline on the north, Fitchburg on the east, Cross Country Road, Highway 18151 on the south, and High Point Road on the west. Public engagement summary, I won't run through all these bullets. We have a fair number of similarities, certainly, with the Southeast Area Plan in terms of public meetings that we conducted, participating with UW People program. We also had a number of focus group meetings, some neighborhood walks, business walks, then check-ins with various boards, committees, and commissions, among many, many other things that we have done to get feedback and engage with the public. And just quick highlights of land use. We heard some similar things with Southeast. There was certainly support for more mixed-use areas and destinations within walking distance of residents within the planning area, allowing for some more housing options within the planning area. We also got several comments from folks about wanting to not only retain employment opportunities that are already there, but hopefully grow employment opportunities. There are many more employees that live within the Southwest area than there are jobs within the Southwest area, and so I think that's why we heard that comment. This draft map that we have here on the right allows some additional development along key corridors. We have some new mixed-use nodes for neighborhoods and boost allowable mixed-use intensity in some previously mapped mixed-use areas, and just highlighting those areas with those green stars where we've either added potential for mixed-use development or boosted intensity of previous nodes. And then this draft map also has some support from additional types of housing, including bumps in intensity in some areas that we're showing on the map. I would just note that all of the proposed land use changes are outlined in bold black on the map and also have numbers associated with them as well. And then we, like Southeast, have undertaken some concept areas, some rough development sketches for what the potential of these areas could be if landowners decide to redevelop in the future. And those are numbered 1 through 4 on the map. So these illustrations just show, in the context of the future land use mapping, what could be done with these areas. The first one, labeled 1 in the bottom left of the slide, is at the intersection of a realigned Raymond Road and High Point Road, kind of just north of Viridian's Midpoint Meadows plat. So this shows the potential for some mixed-use buildings at this intersection, along with some medium residential development, and then some low-medium residential along Midtown Road. And then concept number 2 along the right-hand side. This is Meadowwood Shopping Center, showing potential for mixed-use redevelopment in this area. If and when the current property owner were to ever decide to want to do something with that property. And then also showing some low-medium residential along Russet Road in addition to the community mixed use that we're showing. And I would also note the commercial core, which shows the city's intent and desire to maintain commercial business frontage along Raymond Road. Showing some additional illustrations in these 2 areas. Area number 3 is at the intersection of Maple Grove Drive and McKee Road. I'm showing the possibility for neighborhood mixed use and community mixed use and at that intersection. And then also showing kind of the Whitney Way interchange with the Beltline, some prospects for medium residential community mixed use and neighborhood mixed use. And this concept also shows the potential realignment of Schrader Road. This is something that's been long been shown on the official map of the city for a long time, but would only be implemented if that property were to ever choose to redevelop. Segueing into some transportation highlights, there's that ByTense Schrader Road official mapping that's been in place for a while. Also Hampshire Place, which is just south of Schrader Road, has long been on the city's official map. And so including both of these in the planned street network of the Southwest Area Plan. And then a plan also recommends officially mapping an extension of Meadow Sweet Drive, which is just off of South High Point Road. And this is a street extension that's long been shown in neighborhood development plan for that area that we're carrying forward and recommending be officially mapped as well. Some more transportation highlights. We got a lot of positive feedback on the Hammersley Road bike path or shared use path. So this plan shows the extension in the future of that path west to Elver Park. That's circled on the map. And it would note that all the changes to the bicycle and shared use path network are highlighted in yellow on the map. Adding more pedestrian and bicycle connections to and through Elver Park. And so there are some concept locations of those. Those would be further determined as part of any Elver Park master planning, which would be undertaken in the near future. And then to stripe separated bike lanes on Whitney Way from the Beltline south to Raymond Road, circled in red there. We have some concept cross sections shown to the left on this slide as well. A few more transportation highlights. This was certainly, transportation was certainly a topic we heard the most about in our public engagement. For Raymond Road, we have a short-term action and a long-term action. Short-term, undertaking some increased pedestrian and bicycle safety measures through things like bump outs, rapid flashing beacons, and other measures. Long-term, evaluating whether a reduction in the number of travel lanes might be merited on Raymond Road. Raymond Road actually has less traffic on it than Odana Road, west of Whitney, which was fairly recently reduced to 1 lane in each direction. Then Schrader Road, complete a Safe Streets for All review. This is a project that would be accomplished in the near future by traffic engineering or led by traffic engineering to develop more detailed projects to reduce speeding and improve safety along Schrader Road. Again, this is another major item of feedback that we got through our public engagement. And then there are many Vision Zero speed analyses listed in our health and safety chapter to look at streets that we've heard about safety concerns, specifically with regard to speeding. Some additional highlights from other chapters within the plan. And neighborhoods and housing, there's a property in the Allied Drive area that is currently vacant but owned by the Community Development Authority. And so This plan's draft actions recommends that the CDA pursue owner-occupied housing, such as townhomes at that property. In the Economy and Opportunity chapter, there's a recommendation to look at creation of new tax increment districts to support development of businesses and employment and mixed-use redevelopment. Then also to preserve the Southwest area's ability to grow employment and businesses by maintaining some general commercial employment uses on the GFLU map for business and employer uses. On the Green and Resilient chapter, preparing a master plan for Elver Park. And as I mentioned, including additional connections to and through Elver Park. This is especially relevant because the city recently acquired a fairly significant amount of new property to expand Elver Park to the south. And so this master plan would address that as well as other potential improvements to Elver Park. And then in the effective government chapter, exploring the feasibility of expanding Meadow Ridge Library at its present location or at a site further to the west. Meadow Ridge is one of, I think, only 3 city libraries that rent instead of own its space. And so just as a general policy, given the really permanence of our libraries to pursue expansion of Meadow Ridge within that ownership model. So just highlighting some feedback on draft actions. We've actually gotten hundreds of comments through both public meetings and then also through our online engagement where people could drop comments on the draft actions. So this is just highlighting some of the more frequent areas of feedback that we've gotten. Again, there's an appreciation for that Hammersley Path extension, support for those separated bike lanes on Whitney Way. Few comments about including McKee Road on Vision Zero speed analysis that I mentioned. There's support for the Seminole Highway and converting those existing on-street bike lanes to an all ages and abilities bicycle facility. Some comments about adding Watts Road to the priority sidewalk connections map. Ensuring that new shared use path connections in Elver don't disrupt winter cross-country skiing. At times, as I was reviewing comments, it felt like half of the comments that we got were on that one bullet point. And so certainly that's something that we'd would want to do as the Elver Park Master Plan is undertaken. There are some mixed feelings, really more negative than positive on this particular item as far as studying converting Woodington Way to one-way street connection by Anana. That was something that was brought up in our initial engagement early in the planning process. We included that as a potential action, and there's been some more skepticism about that potential conversion, and so we'll have to take a look about whether or not we retain that as a draft action. And then certainly some feedback on that Hampshire Place street connection that's currently officially mapped, and desire from nearby neighbors that connection not be made. So with that, we have the same general questions for you all on the Southwest Area Plan, and would turn it back over to the Commission for any questions, comments, and feedback they might have.
Thanks, Planner Zellers. We do have at least one registrant on these updates, so I asked Megan if we could recognize our registrant.
Sure. We have Charles Vaughn of District 20, registered neither support nor oppose and wishing to speak.
All right. It looks like you're unmuted, so welcome, Charlie.
Hi, thanks everybody. Charlie Vaughn. I live on Woodington Way. I registered in neither endorsing or opposing because that's a pretty broad statement for the entire plan. So, but specifically today, I wanted to talk about the Woodington Way proposal. It started in a survey on June 17th, where it was a concern for traffic during peak hours, and that is a concern. It can get pretty hairy for half an hour in the morning and a half an hour in the afternoon, but otherwise it's a pretty quiet street. And then that same sort of carried over into the 25th. I believe, Plan Commission meeting with the same comments that it was a congestion thing. But then the draft plan came out, and it wasn't about addressing safety and congestion. It was about, hey, let's make it a one-way. And that was in the draft plan, and then in another document for the I don't remember if it was the Transportation Committee or the Plan Commission, Southwest draft recommendation, Southwest Area Plan Team. And again, it just talked about concern over traffic. So I guess given that it's really an issue for, again, about an hour a day for a school during the school year only, I'd be opposed to the Wooding to any sort of consideration of one way. And I just wanted to get on record with saying that. And thank you all for allowing me to speak.
Thanks for coming out. Thanks for your patience tonight. So,
That's all of our registrants, Chair.
all right, thank you. I would ask if the commission have questions for the team on the Southwest update. Commissioner Wisniewski, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And Ben, thank you for the presentation and the overview of the process. I'm going to dive into Verona Road and the Beltline and the general commercial use there. I understand the use for general commercial. I was reading through the plan though, and I see that it's proposed for proactive zoning to change it from CCT to CC. I think I understand where you all are going for it. I don't necessarily understand I don't necessarily agree with the logic there, but if you can explain that a little bit more about what would be served by, allowing some residential in here, because even CC allows residential in there, and then others with conditional use permits. So do you have any thoughts on that, you can share?
Sure. Yeah. So maybe I can share my screen just so you can see that map that wasn't part of our presentation here, but let me just scroll through. So this is the proactive rezoning recommendations that are in the plan. And so there's that slice labeled, and I'll zoom in here a little bit, number 4 on the map. And so that's what's proposed for proactive rezoning close to Verona Road. And so that, scrolling back up, is recommended, as you say, to proactively rezone from CCT to CC. And that kind of goes towards what some of the discussion has already been, I think, with the Southeast area plan and our review of the land uses for the area and how those lined up with zoning. We thought that for that section, because it immediately fronts the Beltline frontage road and then the Beltline beyond, that it was appropriate to maintain that as commercial uses in the future, and CC zoning is less permissive of residential uses than CCT is. So that's why we proposed proactive rezoning of that slice of land.
And Ben,
Aren't we limiting ourselves though? I mean, because I understand from what I'm reading of the CC, it's really large format commercial. Who's to say what exists there is going to be there in the future, and then what will we have to move into it? I can think of, I've been in Madison for 11 years now, and when I got here there were Shopkos all over the place, and now there aren't, and a lot of them are still vacant at this point in time. And so what is if we're looking at future land uses or future opportunities, I'm just not understanding what's gained by limiting ourselves and all of that. So I don't know that we're going to solve it here. That's just my comments. I'd really like to go back and discuss this further before it's presented.
Sure. I mean, yeah, just I guess a few more points with regard to that. I don't think CC is really specifically limited to large format retail. I think it allows for a variety of retail conditions. And so I think certainly those parcels along that portion of the frontage road are much smaller developments. And I think it would allow those to continue as is, or to be redeveloped into, restaurants, small offices, services, other retailers. And so it would still allow those uses to continue, both current businesses or future businesses along those lines. The access in that area isn't great in terms of getting to that location from the Beltline, but at the same time, it does have some Beltline visibility, and so that can be a positive for commercial businesses sometimes. And then really just kind of circling back to some of the previous concerns and issues that were expressed in the Southeast area in terms of noise and pollution, and how those don't really mesh with the heavy traffic that the Beltline sees in this area. And we also are a little bit uncertain with the Beltline study and what might end up being recommended for the Beltline in this area. That's something that is being worked through by Wisconsin DOT right now. And so there's the possibility that WSDOT might choose an option that might have even more severe impacts than is even currently present in that area in terms of impacts on both businesses and residents. And so that's a level of uncertainty. They're not as far along in that Beltline study as they are in that on the 51 study that is in place for the Southeast Area Plan.
Yeah, I'll just add really briefly. I hear and understand your concern, Commissioner Wisniewski. I think at our most recent Plan Commission meeting, when we were talking about the proactive rezonings proposed in the TOD ordinance, we actually had a couple of zoning changes that were going in the opposite direction, from CC to CCT. And the primary difference that was highlighted in the staff memo about the difference in those zoning districts really had to do with those residential uses. So I think in this case, a range of future land uses that could be commercial and employment in nature could be allowed at those properties. It's primarily the residential uses that would not be allowed within that CC district. I think, Ben, also, it might just be worth clarifying the proactive rezoning does not apply to all of the properties that are identified in this area plan for future land use for the general commercial. It's just that collection of parcels that were identified in that number 4 right along the Beltline east of Britta Park.
Yeah, our proactive rezoning action in this plan is pretty limited. It's just the 4 areas that are outlined in red on this map, including that area 4 along the Beltline frontage road.
Thanks. Alderfield.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of points on this one. I'll start with over here to stay kind of in this vicinity. I did have a suggestion, curious about your reaction, about some of the parcels that are currently industrial that are west of the Home Depot site and the project that this body approved back over the summer. On either side of the Southwest commuter path, there are some big parcels that are in between that Home Depot site and the Meadowwood neighborhood. And it has me thinking about the conversation we had 20 or 30 minutes ago about transitional areas between residential and the non-residential land uses, and has me wondering if this is an appropriate corridor for those long parcels on either side of the bike path to be such a transition and host a mixed use recommendation or something like that. I'm raising this in particular because one of those landowners, I have no idea what their plans are for this site, but they're building a massive campus out in Fitchburg, which may present an opportunity coming up here in the not too distant future. If there's a reaction to that, awesome. Otherwise, I could proceed through other points.
And so you're asking about whether that industrial use is appropriate as shown, more along the lines of the future land use map versus potentially some other future land use that might be designated there?
Yeah, some other future land use that may be more characteristic transitional area next to housing, which could have the benefit of bringing more neighborhood serving uses to future residents by that Verona Road parcel. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we discussed a bit. And it's perhaps a somewhat better location for potentially, especially kind of as you get further south of the Beltline, potentially some future residential uses, since it is a little bit better connected or adjacent to the neighborhood to the west. Our general thought was to kind of maintain some of those employment land uses, though, given some of the comments that we got with concerns about employment from some of the residents in the Southwest area as a whole, and not having very many employment options within the Southwest area. And so kind of trying to retain many of those that are existing, as opposed to entirely switching them over to residential uses. But we could maybe look at, especially, the southern half or something of that area, potentially showing it as a residential future land use as we get further away from that belt line.
I see Tim's hand is up too. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in, and apologies, my computer's struggling tonight, but the industrial uses that are in that area continue to invest in their properties there, including within the last 18 months, the employer that you're referencing and their expansions in Fitchburg. And I think one of the things like came up during the Southeast discussion that may be applicable here as well is that, in our conversations in Southwest, we didn't feel like now was the time for that transition because of both the continued investment by some of those uses, Home Depot, Brunzell, Sub-Zero, Wolf, but also the fact that there would be a lot of infrastructure that would need to be implemented to try to connect things east to west between Verona Road and the neighborhoods to the west of Reitz Road there. Actually, a lot of streets were vacated. At one time, there was more of a street grid east to west there than there has historically been. And we would have to look at, recreating some of those connections for, vehicles, utilities, et cetera. So we were thinking that in this first, 10 years of the Southwest Area Plan, that maybe we would hold serve in that area and keep an eye on what might become with future amendments down the road.
Okay. Yeah. So on the point that Ben made a few minutes ago first, I also noticed, especially the contrast between these two plans and the much lower amount of industrial and commercial over here. So I certainly do see the tension there. I think that I'm pretty interested in the idea of the southern portion of that area being considered, if feasible, for the opportunity for mixed use, because mixed use parcels can themselves also bring job opportunities into. It's not necessarily exclusively housing. It can't be exclusively housing, but I know it's not necessarily the primarily housing projects that we see if there is a need for neighborhood serving businesses to go in here. I guess I don't know what to make of the fact that current landowners continue to invest in their properties. I certainly see what your point about the feasibility of expecting a sale or redevelopment possibilities. And I don't think that's something that we always consider, right, when we're envisioning how the city could grow or where we would allow and want to see the city to grow. So those are my 2 cents. Thank you for letting me speak on those. I wanted to next move to a question that I had for staff about the recommendation for an intergovernmental agreement between Madison and the city and town of Verona. That makes a lot of sense to me, and I am finding myself surprised we didn't already have one. Just because over here, that's what governs a lot of our planning and attachments and whatnot on the east side, I should say. What difference would an IGA make? What's happening right now that we're trying to plan differently that an IGA could cover for us?
I don't know, Tim, do you want to take that, or I can certainly chime in, but
I can
work
start.
on any IGA related issues on the east side.
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that an intergovernmental agreement would help the city with as it pertains to the town of Verona is there are areas on the western edge of this plan that we surround the town of Verona. If you're thinking about land on current Raymond Road, kind of southwest of Albert Park in particular, we have basically grown up around a fairly sizable island of the town of Verona that ideally an intergovernmental agreement might give some direction to what should happen with those properties, where based on certain activities, whether it's the division of land, certain zoning changes, construction of more than one building on a parcel, that we would want that activity to occur in the city of Madison, especially over the last 15 years, where we most immediately abut the town of Verona. We can provide urban services to those town properties with modest, expenditures by developers, maybe to a certain degree by the city, but water and sewer are close. We provide public safety services to city properties that these town islands are sort of nestled within. And so we feel like we would be able to grow into those areas, provide services to urban development, and an intergovernmental agreement can be the first step in that sort of cooperation and making sure that development occurs in a logical manner. So that would be my initial response, and I'd look to Ben to see if he had any follow-up thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I would just mention this, if it is retained in the final adopted version of the plan, is really just an expression of our interest as a city to participate in that process. And so we would then need to approach the town and likely city of Verona as well to see if they are also interested, because in the cooperative planning process, all the involved parties need to be willing to and able to participate in that. And so this would kind of kick off that discussion from our perspective.
Cool. That sounds like a pretty good idea then. Thank you for sharing that overview. My final point was just a comment that I like through the plans, the areas are identified as mixed use nodes, appropriate for redevelopment, especially redevelopment of lower density sites on arterials. So that makes a lot of sense to me, and I'm complete. Thank you.
Thanks, Alderfield. Alder Yeager.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of things. First of all, I'd just like to congratulate the planning staff. We absorbed an awful lot from lessons learned from the West Area Plan. I remember Alder Pritchett asked that question before, but just the formats that have been developed for obtaining resident comment are just working a lot better than we saw that was happening on the West Area Plan. So, it was an experimental process 2 years ago and a year ago, but I think we've learned a lot that's helpful in the implementation of these approaches, including approaches to get input from some of our more disconnected residents that are affected by this. I thought we performed very well, and I want to thank you for all that effort. Ben, I'm glad that you brought up the issue of the level of uncertainty that's been introduced by the current Pell recommendations for the Beltline. And, the timeline for developing something more final is going to go long beyond probably the adoptionist plan, but I think it's really useful to introduce and be specific about the level of uncertainty that that Pell study is really bringing into this. I think we were talking here about protecting the employment and commercial opportunities in several corridors, especially Verona Road. And when we get into the details behind some of the appendices behind the generalized recommendations in the Pell study, we're looking again at massive construction period, multi-year, 3, 4, 5-year disruptions. We just finished putting a tremendous risk on the employment opportunities, commercial districts along Verona Road and some tributaries. And this would perhaps just be the last hurrah for some of them if some of that happens now. We also need to make sure that we've got good commercial corridors and that we take care of the growth and so forth. But some of these details, as they affect what we're looking at in the Southwest Area Plan, really give me some concern. Things like improving the weaving at Whitney Way sounded like a great idea when it was just one sentence in the summary. But then when I look at the options and see that we'd lose 13 residences and 4 businesses, makes me just wonder, is some of this really going to be as beneficial as we hope? So just a thought that we should go ahead and really emphasize that there's this degree of uncertainty that's going to be introduced, and we may have to adjust some plans later to accommodate what actually happens. Thank you.
Yes, definitely. Thank you for that comment and those thoughts. I think, and we just have kind of the draft actions and maps in front of you here this evening for your thoughts and reactions. And we're working on the full narrative of the plan. And I think you'll see some more discussion of that Beltline PEL and the potential impacts as we compile the full plan for official introduction at council.
I'll just add that one of the benefits that the Southeast Area Plan team has is that the 51 study has a little bit more clarity in terms of what some of the options are that are being considered, which they were able to incorporate in the plan as a sort of if-then set of recommendations. The Beltline study is a little bit more premature than that in terms of how we integrate some of what we actually don't know into the Southwest Area Plan. But I do know that the city will be working to pull together its response to the comments that the Wisconsin DOT is soliciting right now. And that process will help us to identify additional information that we can include in the Southwest Plan about that study.
Thank you, Director. I have a hunch that the Common Council would be happy to help emphasize whatever those recommendations are. But thank you.
Thanks. Commissioner Solheim.
Thank you. I just wanted to go back to the conversation between this plan and the prior plan, and that we've discussed at prior meetings about kind of being clear about areas for general commercial and employment and some of these rezonings. I think I appreciate the work that staff has done with these, is really taking a closer look and moving stuff to mixed use as much as possible. Obviously, we are all focused on bringing more housing and ensuring that housing is in areas that's, connected to transportation and amenities. There are some areas that are not ideal for it. And I think we want to push for it as much as possible, but I think it's really important to be transparent about that in our plans. Otherwise we get in this very squishy area where we're kind of comparing projects where like, oh, this one we approved and it was 75 feet from this road and this one's 100 feet. And it doesn't seem like very clear policy to me. So I do appreciate the fine look at those details and being a little bit more clear about those areas where we're not feeling confident about housing in that particular location. That's all.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks. Alder Figueroa.
Thank you. I do want to echo the gratitude to staff for working on this plan. I do think the engagement has been outstanding, and I will have to say, as being 100 or maybe 99% participant on the West Area Plan, the engagement was also outstanding. So I don't think engagement was the lesson learned there, in my personal opinion. I think you guys did a fabulous job. And so I do appreciate not just the work to reach out to people, but also the people that has engaged with us in a way that allows for the dialogue and communication and growth and ideas to flow both ways when we are having these discussions. So I'm really, really thankful about that. So when it comes to the plan, I mean, I'm still struggling a little bit or I'm still trying to find ways to ensure that the transparency and clarity that Nicole was just talking about is found across the entire plans around the city. I struggle a little bit with the topic specific to the sub-zero area, for example, where I get it, they are a valuable business at this point, but so the same can be said about the Vitens golf place, and we are proposing a road in between of that land there. So I really wish that we try to be more consistent on the reasoning that we use to make these decisions, because as long as they're not consistent, I'm going to continue to push back on them. So, like, for example, yes, I get that some of that corner that we've been discussing is facing the bed line, but not the entire corner is facing the bed line. So I really hope that we still go back and take a look at what other possibilities can be done with that specific area. And when we are talking about protecting areas for businesses, especially on this district, when we all agree that are limited, then what is the vision for them? What is the growth opportunity that we have to have a life community economic development on that area? How can we make a connection that brings people from Iowa and all these other Midwestern towns into the city of Madison? It's like that's the entry of the city of Madison coming from the west. So what can we do to actually say, you arrive in Madison and here is this economic development spot that is vibrant and helps and helps our economy and helps our neighborhood. So don't have any solutions for you on that, but again, just the way that the thinking process, I still feel like it needs to be fine-tuned to be more consistent. And then the Pell project thing, the bedline project, that is definitely a big problem for us. And just the thought of losing housing when we're trying to put housing is something that is extremely problematic. So to me, I just look at that like just removing myself from the one spot, just as a general for the city. How are we going to make sure that we don't create more that we continue to create easier ways to engage on development. I mean, just this weekend, I worked on a blog about the taxes, and I downloaded the entire tax data for the city of Madison, and I did focus on apartment buildings. The millions of dollars that we collect on taxes from all these developments, that the same people it's a way to reduce the burden on single family homes when it comes to the tax shares, right? Like those developments are important not only for creating housing opportunities, but to increase our taxation. So again, not asking you any questions about the corner, but just expressing that I still feel like we can do a little bit better on that corner on Verona Road. And then I cannot end my comments without mentioning the library at Meadowwood, because if I did that, I feel like not doing my job. So I did notice that we changed the language, or maybe I don't know if the language was like that before, but the language says to look at the possibilities for the library to move farther west or at the current location. So on the last neighborhood association meeting, I just want to really express what people were expressing there. Does the city understand? Do the planners understand the importance of this library to stay on this, to be on this location? How important this library is for the Meadowwood area, for the Allied area, for the areas for the Teresa Terrace area? Like, that library is the lifeline for that neighborhood. So I know we're working on other things that I don't think are appropriate for the plan right now, but the way that we word that on the plan, please keep in mind that we do need a library farther west, but that's going to have it's going to have to be another library. Moving this library from that Meadowwood location, it will be extremely detrimental for that neighborhood. So no questions, just comments. And again, thank you so much for all the work that you guys have put into this plan. I really, really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Alder. Any other questions or comments for our presenters, or generally? Thanks for the great discussion and everyone's engagement on these. I think, Megan, anything more you want to add, or are we ready to move on?
No, I think that's all. I appreciate the questions and feedback. I wonder, maybe Ben, could you just close us out with a very brief summary of the next steps here when the commission will see this again?
Sure. So, I mean, we anticipate really moving forward along the same timeline, essentially the Southeast plan that Rebecca had closed out that presentation with. So we'll be reviewing all the public comments that we've gotten on the draft actions, discussing obviously the feedback that we've gotten from you all tonight and from other boards, committees, and commissions. And we'd anticipate possibly introduction of a full final draft of the plan sometime possibly February, March of next year, followed by referral to boards, committees, and commissions for review after that, and then bouncing back to the council for their vote sometime in the spring, I would say, is likely.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I think we'll continue on our agenda with member announcements, communications, and business items. Does anyone have any of those to share or discuss? All right. Seeing none, we'll move to the secretary's report. Megan.
All right. A couple quick reminders. If you haven't already, to please fill out your statement of interest forms. This is due by January 6th of 26. We also provided for you in the agenda a long list of items that have recently been approved by the Common Council. This is 2 meetings worth of business that you forwarded to them, but wanted to note in particular that the zoning code changes that you discussed at your last meeting were adopted by the Common Council, including all of the amendments as you had recommended them to the council. That set of ordinance changes caps off a really busy 2025 in terms of making progress on ordinance changes relating to Housing Forward. The council adopted 14 individual ordinances in 2025 related to the advancement of Housing Forward that did, many dozens of things in terms of making changes to our zoning code. So each one of those may not have made sweeping changes on their own, but I think together that body of work is an important package in terms of particularly the type of middle scale housing and some improvements to where and how we see multifamily development across the city. We talked tonight about a number of items that we referred to those meetings in January and February of next year. So just a reminder that while the upcoming matters list may look short for those meetings today, we will have a number of projects that were supposed to be discussed tonight that will appear on those agendas in the early part of next year. And then finally, just wanted to thank you all. This is our last meeting of 2025. So thank you for another great year of work. I know the Plan Commission stays very busy. There's a lot that comes before you, and I really appreciate your detailed attention to all of the projects, your very thoughtful discussions, the meaningful questions that you ask staff and applicants. It's a huge commitment of your time, and I really appreciate all of the work and effort that you put in to support this important role within our community. I hope you have a great holiday season and New Year and a nice month off before our next meeting.
Thanks, Megan. Alder Figueroa Cole.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you so much for reminding me about all these zoning changes that we have accomplished this year. This is gonna sound, no, I'm not even gonna say it that way because it's gonna sound dumb, but this has been quite a labor to get here. It's been years in the making. We have pushed through this. So I have worked with multiple colleagues, some that are no longer at the council, some that have been partners in crime on this one, and we have pushed that so hard on this, and you guys have come out just, you've done an amazing work, and I am so grateful for that. So in top of all the area plans, which is a big change for the way that the city has done business before, despite all that work, we still managed to make all those changes for the zoning, which are so critical for the housing situation in Madison. So I could not again say the city of Madison has an amazing, professional, smart staff, and you guys came out shining at the other side. So I really appreciate it. And to the rest of you, thank you so much for all the work that you guys do, and have a great holiday season.
Thanks, Alder. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks. This is a nice place to end our meeting, but I will still invite any other questions from the commission before we leave the secretary's report. Thanks, everybody. I guess we're ready for a motion and a second to adjourn. Alder Field, thank you. And Commissioner Wisniewski, thank you. Any objection to unanimous approval? All right. Thanks for getting those hands off. That was very helpful. We'll stand adjourned, and we'll see you all next year. Everybody have a great holiday. Thanks.
Thank you. Have a good night.